something just provided them. It should be provided to this committee. If it needs to be handled in camera, if it needs to be handled in a classified manner, we have the facilities, and we are certainly prepared to make the necessary commitments to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate, if I may further explain, I have instructed our staff to make sure they do make this information available to you as well, and my understanding is that they're seeking to make arrangements with your staff to do so this month.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today, sir. Last night I was discussing the importance of this hearing with my teenage daughter. She's in civics right now. And I reminded her that it was 240 years ago when John Adams was trying to explain the difference between an empire and our fledgling republic, and he famously summarized, "We're a nation of laws, not of men." And I reminded her that the founders understood that all men are fallen, we're flawed, and that we have a natural instinct. People have a natural instinct to benefit their friends and seek retribution against their political enemies. And that's a dangerous instinct when it's exercised by someone in a high position of authority at the Department of Justice, obviously. So the founders gave constitutional authority to Congress to monitor all this and to monitor those who are in responsibility so we can maintain the rule of law. And as has been mentioned here today in the hearing, the survival of our republic depends on that. So there's been a lot of discussion this morning about biases of some members of the Mueller team, and we've expressed our serious concerns about former FBI Director Comey's investigation of Hillary Clinton's illegal use of a private server. Of course, it's been mentioned, federal regulations strictly prohibit, for obvious reasons, any DOJ employee from participating in a criminal investigation or prosecution if the employee has a personal or political relationship or affiliation with any person under investigation. Reports have shown, and it's been mentioned this morning, that the lawyers on Mueller's team have contributed more than $62,000 to Democratic candidates and only $2,750 to Republican candidates. The question is, isn't it reasonable for us to assume that there's an inherent bias there?
Congressman, I appreciate that question. I have teenage daughters, and I've had the same sorts of conversations with them. And I can assure you, Congressman, that although I understand the basis for the concern, as I explained earlier, Director Mueller and I have a lot of experience as managers in the department, and we understand our responsibility to make sure that nobody's personal opinions are improperly allowed to impact the investigation. So I can assure you that I've discussed that with Director Mueller, and he's taking appropriate steps to make sure that his investigation is not affected by any bias.
What are those appropriate steps? I mean, let us know what that looks like. I know you've explained it a little bit, but just
yes, sir.
For my daughter back home, what does that look like?
I appreciate it. I think there's several aspects to it. Pardon me. Number one is the tone that you set around the office of making clear to everybody that although they may have personal political views, it's not to factor into their work and they're not to discuss it in the context of their work. Number two, it's the process that we have within the Department of Justice. Nobody does anything on their own. Everything is subject to review, and the more significant the matter, the higher level the review, and the more people are involved in reviewing it. And of course, we have external checks as well. We have our Inspector General, our Office of Professional Responsibility. And for any matters that we bring, of course, in the Department of Justice, we need to be prepared to prove our case in court beyond any reasonable doubt, so you need admissible evidence. So there are several levels of checks within the department.
In 2014, speaking of the processes, Attorney General Eric Holder announced a significant policy shift concerning electronic recording of statements. And there was established at that time a presumption that the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies will record all interviews of witnesses and suspects. The question is that policy still in place today?
I believe that the policy had to do only with custodial subjects, that is somebody who's in custody of the FBI, not with mere witnesses.
With regard to the interview of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton about her email server in 2016, was that recorded? Do you know?
I have no personal knowledge of that. My understanding from what I've read in the media is no.
Could you find that out for us specifically?
Certainly.
If it was not recorded, would you have any idea why that would not have been recorded under that policy?
I think the norm would be for a non-custodial interview not to be recorded. That's my understanding.
If it was her email server, wouldn't it be implied that she was a custodian of?
No.
Not at that time?
That policy only applies to folks who actually have been arrested and are in custody at the time of the interview.
That's not the way I understood that policy, but I'll defer to you on that. But if you can't get us follow-up information on that, it'd be helpful. Earlier this year, certain names of individuals were apparently illegally leaked who were caught in a FISA surveillance investigation, and obviously when something like this occurs, it's absolutely irresponsible and egregious that a leak on that level is it would ever happen. Can you inform this committee on what is currently being done within the DOJ to investigate potential FISA leaks? Just emphasize that for us.
Yes, sir, I appreciate the question. The Attorney General has made it a very, very high priority for us to pursue any leaks that are in violation of the law. So when we receive a referral from an intelligence agency that they believe there's been a leak of information within their jurisdiction and that they believe a criminal investigation should be conducted, we give that a very high priority. We've set up a new unit within the FBI to conduct those investigations, and we have attorneys within our National Security Division who are specializing in that, and we are monitoring those cases to make sure that they move expeditiously. Obviously, as you know, there are challenges in proving a leak case, but we are giving those extraordinary attention.
I'm out of time. I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I understood in testimony to Mr. Ratcliffe that you said that you were supervising the Inspector General and his team's review.
Pardon me. The Inspector General reports to the Deputy Attorney General. In the conduct of the investigation, the Inspector General traditionally has a high degree of autonomy, so I'm not micromanaging it, but I'm aware of the investigation and aware that we anticipate a conclusion in the near future.
Is he providing you substantive reports, or is he providing you timeline reports?
Generally, timeline reports when there are significant issues that arise in his investigations, as for example with the text messages that came up in the review of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. He brings that to my attention.
And I am curious about the scope of the Inspector General's review. My understanding is it's to review allegations that department policies or procedures were not followed in connection with or in actions leading up to or related to former Director Comey's July 2016 announcement that Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton would not be charged in her use of a private email server while Secretary of State. Is that the limitation of the scope, or is it broader than that? And what are the boundaries?
I believe it's broader than that. The Inspector General, I believe, was scheduled to testify today, and it'd be better to direct it to him. But he actually has publicly talked about the scope of the investigation and identified a number of matters within the scope of that investigation. And so it's relatively broad, I believe.
Well, in light of that, Director Wray was here last week, and in questioning, he said that he would try to unring the bell if the Inspector General's conclusions indicated that there was something that had gone amiss with the Hillary Clinton investigation. I asked him what that meant, and he alluded to some of the personnel issues and remedial personnel action, but he also said that he thought they might reopen that original investigation if necessary. Is that your understanding as well?
I don't know exactly what he said. It's hard to unring bells, but we do make every effort, Congressman, to take appropriate action if something comes to our attention. So I would certainly support Director Wray if he feels there's justification for reviewing that.
And I'm not just talking about reviewing, I'm talking about reopening the investigation. Is that, if that's the direction you'd concur with that? If that's the direction you want?
I mean, it's certainly conceivable. It would depend upon the facts and circumstances, but if he felt it was appropriate to do that, I would certainly give that great weight.
Additionally, I just thought it was interesting that you previously, and I'm quoting from, this came from the media, so I don't know if it's accurate. That's just my skepticism, but it says, if there were conflicts, this is you speaking, if there were conflicts that arose because of Director Mueller or anybody employed by Director Mueller, we have a process within the department to take care of that. And just now, you've indicated that I think that those processes include the tone around the office, everything's subject to review by a supervisor, and the Inspector General could be called in if there's something amiss. But the bottom line is you ultimately have to prove the case in court, so there's some checks and balances built into the system. But previously, Director Wray and Attorney General Session testified in this committee that there are no formal processes to discover individual conflicts of interest or vet for and I'm going to call unfair bias, because everybody has some bias, it's just whether it's unfair or not. They both said it's left up to each individual. Would you concur with their bottom line assessment there?
To a large extent, Congressman, I would say it's left to the individual, but also to the supervisor. The supervisor has a responsibility to know if there's some reason for concern and should take appropriate action and do an inquiry if there is a basis for it.
And another issue that we've touched on today, and this has been brought up repeatedly, is this idea of integrity, independence, adherence to the rule of law, and this idea that we don't want to lose faith in the rule of law. And one of the things that I cannot convey to you in strong enough terms is that when I go home to my constituents, there is a real sense that there is disparity going on in how the current administration is being treated, and with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. I understand a lot of that is the divisiveness that's in the nation, a lot of that is partisanship, I understand that. But some of the things that we've talked about today, whether it's the Strzok issue, Bruce Orr, and Jeannie Ray, Aaron Zabley, Andrew Weissman, et cetera, it isn't the money that people donate to campaigns. I think we've established that. It is, what did they do beyond that? What did Aaron Zabley do? Set up the private email server, Representative Cooper, who set up the private email server and destroyed Clinton computers, hard drives, and drives. I mean, these are actions. These are actions that someone took, and it's not necessarily a mere bias that we might have, or an unfair bias. It's just something that goes beyond that, and it taints this investigation. And that is the reason that so many of us, it's not because we don't think Director Mueller is a war hero and has done great service to this country. It is simply that it has tainted everything around this investigation, so that I can't go home without people decrying it in loud terms. And so I think that that's what needs to happen. I think we need more information. Some of this information came out through FOIA requests, some through the Inspector General, but some of it not very timely. And I do agree with the chairman here. With this committee has jurisdiction, we need to be getting this information timely. And with that, my time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes the